Okay, so there's this global initiative leading up to the third of Tammuz, to Gimel Tammuz, is really to focus on what we call hiskashrus. So hiskashrus is really connection. It's kasher. If anyone knows a little bit of Hebrew, a kesher. You'll say something like, oh, I have a kesher with that person, I have a connection with that person. So hiskashrus is this like verb of this reality of this connection. And for a lot of people who have, been alive during the Rebbe's time, or went to the Rebbe for advice, or sat at Farbrengens or got $1 from the Rebbe, that value of hiskashrus is really something innate, and something that the truth is, before the Rebbe's airtime, before that day, we kind of took for granted. Like it just kind of was a reality for me as a child, at least. I mean, I wasn't looking at it from a sophisticated lens. So there's this global initiative started by a group of shluchim and shluchot, to kind of bring high quality Chabad teachings to Chabadniks. Because Chabad has this really good quality of being forward facing and teaching globally, all different communities, regardless of observance and background and color and stripe and whatever their background is. But internally, there is this need to make sure that we're infusing our own Chabadniks with the same level and same quality programming and same teachings, so that they don't just, that the lifestyle, we talked about in Tanya so much how the lifestyle is so internal to external, that it's meant to be so deep, that we're meant to start to from inside out. But if it just becomes an external checklist of how to live a life as a chassid, as a Chabadnik, then it's not Chabad anymore. It's not Chachma and Das anymore. So there's this massive initiative, global initiative, to allow and to provide quality material for Chabad communities around the world, including high school girls and student seminary girls. And so I'm actually jumping on right after this, because I'm going to be speaking to a group of girls in Canada about this subject. And I spoke to a group in Detroit, and I think next week I have a group in Pittsburgh, and a group in Las Vegas, and a group in South Florida. So it's going to be a busy week of teaching, but I'm looking forward, because to me it's a very powerful subject to try to connect and understand. And as you ladies already know, with my teaching style is, in general, I don't like information to just be for the sake of information. I don't like information to just be theoretical or philosophical. I truly believe that Torah needs to be real and practical and doable. So just to finish up the introduction, I asked Menucha, Tan, and I asked her, what do you think about hiskashrus, about this idea of connection? She said it's a connection that's kind of just there. And there's a lot of historical context of what a Rebbe is. It's a Rosh B'nai Yisrael, which literally means the head of a Jewish people. And there's a lot of historical context of looking throughout the generations, how God in every generation assigned a tzaddik to really care for the spiritual and material needs of that generation. And it kind of goes beyond being just like a righteous tzaddik, but also really kind of zooming in on that generation's needs. Not just physical, but spiritual, emotional, etc., etc. So, Menucha says, I said, so what do you think hiskashrus is? Hold on, I'm just going to silence, because it seems like my WhatsApp is going to be jumping and making me crazy here. There we go. So she said, number one, it's hearing stories of the Rebbe. She said stories of the Rebbe. She said writing upon to the Ohel, which is the Rebbe's burial place. So you write basically a pidyon nefesh, a letter from you, like a letter to a father, where you basically are asking, now that the Rebbe is on high, to intervene on your behalf and help channel blessings into your life. And tapping into the energy of this righteous Nasi, this righteous tzaddik. And then Menucha goes on to say, the next one she says is the stories, the pan, celebrating special days on the Hasidic calendar, like monumental moments. And then she says, and then the Gashmias of Hasidus. I was like, Gashmias of Hasidus. So the word Gashmias actually means material. But so I was like, it was like interesting. Like we talk about spirituality as being ruchnias and Gashmias as being materialism. I'm like, what does it mean, materialism of Hasidus? Like, what is she trying to say? So I challenged her, of course, on each one. I said, okay, why is there a value in writing upon? So she said, because the Rebbe is like a tati who cares about us. He's like a leader, like Moshe Rabbeinu, who cared about every little sheep and every Jew. So the Rebbe is like a tati, cares about us, and if there's nothing too unimportant to write, you can write whatever you're really feeling. Okay. I said, why is it important to hear stories of the Rebbe? She said, college students, like they're very into sports or into football or something. And if you ask them about a certain player, they're going to know a lot about them because they hear different stories about them to learn about them. So it keeps them connected to that football player. So for us, we want to stay connected to the Rebbe. We need to, if we hear stories, it helps us stay connected. I was like, okay, awesome, next, and I was like, okay, but what's the deal about gashmias of chassidus, like of hiskashrus, gashmias of being, the materialism of being a chassid? What are you referring to? So she goes on to say, I mean, doing it. You got to do chassidus. It's not good enough to just learn the ideas in chassidus. Like, let's say you learn a beautiful story that the Rebbe had, Ahavat Yisrael, he had love, unconditional love. You also have to do it. So obviously, she's getting what Yassi and I are trying to do, trying to help our children understand the practical reality of what it means to live the life. Not just, again, philosophically or abstract or theoretically, but do it. So today's Pirkei Avot, so first of all, it's good to see everyone, Sharon and Connor. I said Connor, but Tamara, you're not Connor. It's confusing. I guarantee I know you're not Connor. We know who you are. I hope it's good to see everybody. We're going to just jump right in. Nice glasses, Tamara.
Oh, thank you.
We're going to jump right in. Rachel's joining us today because Rachel asked me a really good question. And Rachel, I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm going to have you launch off with the question because I actually told her, well, guess what? We're discussing this in Pirkei Avot this week. So I'd love to hear, can you launch off with your question and then we'll kind of bring us into which Mishnah I was really hoping to cover today in depth. Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So my question was, along the lines of like, how do we practically look at each person as a soul and like as that, like that's our common denominator like throughout humanity, as opposed to judging each person by their outside, by different characteristics, like just characterizing them, I guess, like looking at them as a connection. And I think that Chabad, like that's something that y'all really emphasize, is looking at people's souls and being super non-judgmental. So I just wanted to get better at that.
Your microphone's off.
Sorry. Okay, so first of all, as you ladies know, I think that question is amazing, and to hear it from a young woman who is at a stage in life where there is so much, I mean, even just neurologically, you could really shape your brain in a different way than us on here, we're a little more set in our ways, it's a little harder to change things. So hearing from a young person, especially in this kind of volatile climate, where opinions and perspectives and thoughts are, that's what I believe, and that's what I think, and that's who I am, and we tend to, as human beings, really categorize and label ourselves. The old famous Chabad line is, labels are for clothing, not for humans. But there's some comfort in labeling yourself as a certain person or a certain type of Jew, which, anyone who knows me, that's my pet peeve, right? How many people said I'm not Jewish enough? I'm like, there's no such thing. You either are or aren't. It's not like I'm a little pregnant, a lot pregnant. You are or you aren't, So, so that whole notion of, and I've also heard even more extensively, people have a fear that when they're going to walk through Chabad house doors, they're going to be judged, right? Like as if Rabbi and I have a score sheet and we're like, okay, check, X, minus, plus, like no, 0, none of that, because A, we don't have time for that, but B, that's not our role, right? And I remember once having a conversation with our board, and it was like a group of students, and they were like, okay, what's the deal? We have Jews from this background, from that background, like, oh no, sorry, it wasn't our board. It was it was someone who asked us, what type of Jew comes to Chabad? And it was an Israeli professor. He was visiting, and he was very vocal. And he said, what type of Jew? So I said, Jews. He said, what type? The Orthodox? I said, yeah, I guess if you want to say the Orthodox, there's like maybe 2 kids that keep Shabbos. So yeah, they come to Chabad. He said, the Chabadniks? I said, Chabadniks? You mean my husband and my children? Yeah, they come to Chabad. He said, so what kind of Jew? I said, Jews. He said, what do you mean? Normal ones? I said, yes, also the normal ones.
There
But
are also normal ones.
I actually told him, I said, why don't you come tonight and see who walks through these doors? And he did, and then he stayed as long as he was visiting from Israel, as long as he was in town, he kept coming because he found that it was a space where there wasn't judgment of what type of Jew you are. And I get why as human beings, we like to label and box or categorize ourselves. But it really led me, and Rachel and I said to Rachel, we need to have a conversation about judgment in general. Because right now, if you put out a photo of your child in the park, you are going to be mommy shamed or judged. I mean, we're living in a culture where if you state your opinion or you share a meme, you're going to be misinterpreted, you're going to be judged, you're going to be labeled. Like, we're living in a kind of a volatile, like, statements you say, statements you don't say, like, there's going to be judgment. Go ahead, Tamara, go ahead.
And say we also have a time right now where we feel like we have to explain ourselves. Everything.
Right, justify our everything. Justify everything. And
not just judge from somebody, but we feel like, and not only are we getting the judgment, but we feel like we have to explain so we don't get the judgment.
Right. So we're living in a it's really intense. I'm saying, like, it's intense. I saw someone said, I'm off of social media for the next month. Call me later. I'm done. I don't want to have to say the right thing, the wrong thing, each word, each letter, which is why, ladies, we talked about last week, is that Chabad's approach has been what? Sticking by Torah's approach. Like, that's our mindset, and that's what we're going to share, and that's what's going to come out. So because it's a challenging climate. I think that's a good enough way to describe it. But what I did say to Rachel is it's really time to because whenever we see something and there's a question, we got to zoom out. We got to zoom back and see the broader picture. So I was just telling her that in Pirkei Avot, there's a lot of discussion about judgment. A lot. If you go to a Pirkei Avot search engine or go online and search Pirkei Avot judgment, it's going to pop up a lot of different things. And some of it's talking about how God is going to judge us. Some of it's how we need to judge ourselves, and some of it's how to judge others. And so I think that to deny the idea that we are hardwired to come to conclusions and create judgments is a fallacy. Okay, and the ladies who are here who are more, in tune with the field of psychology and the way the brain works, on a very practical way, why do we have this tool within us, or this character trait within us that God gave us? Is why?
To function. I mean, you can't, we'd be nowhere if we couldn't judge, is this better or that better? What am I going to do?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think number one, executive function, we want to be able to constantly, and Sharon, you popped onto Instagram last night, we were having our live Q&A, and that question actually came up about Bechira, free will. God enabled us to constantly decide, make decisions between different things. Should I eat this breakfast or should I eat that breakfast? A very simple level. Is this relationship safe? Is that relationship safe? The ability to create judgments within ourselves, to be able to discriminate between one or the other. Now, the problem is you can't say the word discrimination, right? We're not talking about discrimination because of who you are, who you're in a relationship with, your color of your skin, your class in society. We're not talking about that. We're saying I'm able to choose, which we're constantly making choices, and God created us that way. The other thing is, as far as judgment's concerned, it really helps us stay safe. I mean, do I feel comfortable with the person walking behind me? I shared the story with you ladies that when I was held up on the subway, me and my friend, we were in a full car, and all of a sudden it was an empty car. It was 6 p.m. and it was two very large gentlemen, and one of them said to me and whispered in my ear, "We have a gun. If you don't give us your money and your jewelry, we have a gun." And I, at that split second, he said, "My friend over there has a gun." I looked over at his friend. I saw his friend was like half asleep, reading a book, listening to music, like not reading a book, but listening to music. I'm like totally tuned out. And I quickly made a split judgment call that, in fact, he did not have a gun because it was 6 p.m. He would never shoot us on the subways at 6 p.m. It's too early in the day. It was too early to do such a crime. And his friend did not look. I didn't see a bulge. I didn't see the friend even react. And I made a judgment call that this young man, I'll say male because I don't think that's a man. A man doesn't try to hold up two 16-year-olds, right? This male was, in fact, just figuring he had two easy targets, two young teenagers that he was double the size of. And in a second, I remember when the subway came to a stop, I told my friend, let's get off the train. We got off, and then I looked at the platform. It was a completely empty platform. I said, let's get back on. We got back on a different car. And my friend didn't know because he was talking to me. He whispered in my ear. At the tool of judgment keeps us safe, right? Fight or flight, constantly being able to make judgment calls. Now, the reason I got back on, she was so confused. Get off the train, get on the train. And I was like, it was an empty platform, right? An empty platform. Those guys came off after us. We actually would have been in trouble. So I think that we have to recognize that it's a gift that God gave us. Now, like with every gift, every character trait, we can use it in the right way, or we know it can use it in the wrong way. And we've talked about this extensively, that every innate character trait that we have as human beings is inherently neutral. The only one that's not neutral is selfishness, ego, because ego is dangerous, because ego is the root of a lot of negativity. But everything, passion, could be good or negative. It depends how we as human beings utilize it. Now, that's not ego as in self-concept, meaning I exist as a human being, because Judaism definitely speaks about how we have to imagine that B'shvili Nivra Olam, that the entire world was created for me. And Kabbalah teaches us that the entire world exists until I showed up on this world, or you showed up, every one of us, until our birthdays. The day that God decided the entire world, the entire history of the world could not exist until that moment, until I arrived, without me. Meaning, up until this point, the world didn't need me and my divine energy. Now I'm here, I'm needed. So we're not replacing, I'm not saying that there's no space for a sense of self and all of that, but we're going to put that on the side, and maybe it's for another conversation at another time, the paradox between a lack of ego or humility and sense of self. Putting that on the side, we'll parking lot that or put it on ice, and we'll get to it another time. But back to what we're saying is, we can understand, all of us as intelligent beings, we can understand that there's a space and a place for this, for being able to judge. But yet, here's where we'll jump into the Mishnah. There's more than one Mishnah that deals with it, but we're going to try to focus on one today. And there's so much to say, and there's so much to learn, and there's so much that I think if we really apply to our lives in a practical way, guess what? The world would be a better place. And as we said in the past few classes, it always starts within ourselves, then ripples out to the people that we're most closely connected with, and then our community, and then et cetera, et cetera. So the ripple effect is outward, but it starts from inside. Real change happens from inside. And we know that from the field of education. We know that from the field of psychology. We know that from all different layers and levels, is that to truly transform oneself, if someone else is inspiring you to take on a healthy lifestyle, unless you're really ready, you can read every book in the world, you could go to any workshop, you have to be ready. Okay, so let's open up our Pirkei Avot book with that very long introduction. And if anyone wants to add questions to what we just threw in there, but we'll read together from the Pirkei Avot book. Some of you ladies can maybe jump in and read some of it. In the second chapter, Perek Beis, Mishnah Daled, and I'll tell you in a second what page that is. That is 54. Now, Mishnah Daled is a very, it's chock full of, it's not just about judgment, but we'll focus on that for today. So if anyone wants to read in Rabbi Gamliel, if anyone wants to read that, that would be great. And then anyone want to jump in and read?
Where are we again?
Sorry, page 54 looks like this. Well, like this. 54 in this book. But if you're not in a book, you can open Pirkei Avot, Perek Beis, which is the second chapter, and it's the fourth Mishnah.
Okay, so Rabban Gamliel would often say, make Hashem's will your will, so that he will make your will his will. Nullify your will before Hashem's will, so that he will nullify the will of others before your will. Oh dear. Manya. Is Manya frozen? Okay,
No, I'm not frozen. I'm here. You're doing a really good
okay.
job.
Wow, that was a little confusing. Okay, but anyway, we'll continue.
We'll break it down. And you know what? If anyone else is wants also, you can look down at the other parts. Feel free. Okay.
Yeah. Hillel says, do not separate yourself from the community by ignoring their troubles. Stay on guard and do not be confident in your ability to withstand temptation until the day you die. Do not judge your friend until you are in his place and can fully understand what he is going through. Do not say something that is not easily understood, assuming that it will eventually be understood after more thought, because it might be misinterpreted. Do not say, when I have free time, I will learn Torah, because you may never have free time. Oh.
We all know the need to, okay, so first of all, like I said before we read this Mishnah, it's one line, don't judge your friend and until you're in his place, which is Al tadin es chavercha ad shetagia lemkomo. So first of all, okay, there's so much more in this Mishnah, right? Like so much in this Mishnah, but I really, as much as I want to focus on all aspects of this Mishnah, for today, since Rachel is joining us and this is the main one she's passionate about, I don't mind going back to the rest of the Mishnah next week, but for now we're going to stick with this main idea. Why is it start with Rabbi Gamliel and then it goes to Rabbi Hillel? And Rabbi Hillel saying, don't separate yourself from the community. So we're going to focus on the parts that Rabbi Hillel said. Don't separate yourself from the community. Do not be confident in your abilities until you die, and don't judge your friend until you are in his place. Let's focus on those three. Can anyone understand or try to understand some sort of connections between the three of them? Al tifar shmina tzibur, meaning there's a community, there's a group of people. Don't separate yourself, meaning don't just be like, oh, that's their issues, not my issues. Okay. Number two, don't have so much confidence in yourself until the day you check out. What's that about? And then the one we're talking about, don't judge your friend until you're in his place. Which we know, how many times have you heard this one? Don't judge someone until you understand the reality, right? Did anyone see the video that Rabbi shared with the two lighters on Facebook? Okay, I'm probably going to put it up shortly because I think it's so powerful. But let's first, can anyone think of a thread of a connection between don't separate yourself from community, don't be overly confident in yourself until the day you die, and don't judge your friend until you're in his place? Can anyone kind of try to see any connection?
My mouth is full, sorry.
No, enjoy. Go ahead.
I was thinking of the Holocaust and how people thought this is they're not telling the truth. They would listen to people that would tell them that there was problems, and people would turn and say, it's not my problem, and until it really was their problem. And a lot of Jews didn't listen to people that kept saying, you need to get out. Look, this is what's happening. And a lot of people didn't believe or want to hear it. And I was just thinking, wow, if they would have been more of a community together. I mean, I understand that they were living in a Jewish area. I'm not talking about that. But I'm just thinking, believing their fellow man and listening, truly listening to other Jews, what they had to say. Maybe that, I don't know, that was just a thought that came to my head.
Okay. No, I hear what you're saying, that maybe I think it's easy for us to, try to kind of understand. And obviously that different people reacted differently, and some people did get out, and you hear all sorts of different stories. But are you saying that because they weren't such a strong community, that's why they didn't pay attention, or maybe they just didn't believe it was possible?
I think exactly it.
I think
they did not believe it's possible.
I think both.
My grandfather was a very educated man in Poland, university educated. He could not believe that somebody with a German culture would ever do something like that. This was their own belief. If you were an educated person. Maybe if you're simple, you would understand and believe. But being cultured and music and theater and writers cannot happen.
Right.
And he went to Auschwitz like a little lamb thinking he's going to be taking a shower. Said, I never met him.
Right. Yeah, I think there are a lot of people that look, because when you think of values being, okay, this is why, going back to what we said last week, I think of why our values need to be so steadfast and why we're so blessed that we have values that come from Torah, because when our values are secure and anchored, then we really stick by them, because subjective values are really a problem because they're subjective and it's whatever I feel. And I think that people didn't realize that such a moral, civilized country can end up turning that direction. Okay, so what I want to kind of focus on is, first of all, don't be confident in yourself until the day you die. A lot of times judgment comes from, I'm better than the other person. I'm better. And here this mission is saying, the hell is saying, guess what? You're actually also a human being. You're also a human being. We actually even know when Moses was the most humble of all men, said, if I lived in a different generation, who knows? Someone else to have my job, who knows if they would be able to do this, right? So when we're judging someone else, it usually comes from a place of feeling very superior. And what we need to remember is that we're also human beings. We're also basar v'dam. We're also have an inner duality. It's a hari, it's a tov. And if we were put in that position, how would we handle it? So I think the connectivity between that is very, very, very clear. And I would say also, al tifrosh min hatzibur, don't separate from the collective whole, is that a lot of times a person is like, oh, it's a little bit of a holier than thou, like, I'm better than that. Instead of understanding that you can also influence that whole in a positive way, if, let's say, you are coming from a different perspective. And then as far as don't judge someone until you walk in place, and we know this, don't judge someone until you walk a mile in their shoes, right? And so I'm going to try, so here's the two aspects I want to talk about. So there's a story of Reb Zusha and Reb Elimelech. They're two righteous brothers. We talked about them in the past, and they used to go around from city to city to kind of influence people to grow in their Judaism and keep learning and imagine, just keep growing and inspire people. So Reb Zusha and Elimelech, once, there's a story told about how they would go to someone in the town would host them. And at night, there's a custom for, I would say righteous people are probably doing this, not you and I, custom of cheshbon hanefesh, to really, really self-assess. Where am I holding? What am I doing? What am I up to? And so the host would wake up in the middle of the night and hear crying from the room of their guests, and they would peek in. What would they see? Reb Zusha looking at his own behavior. Today I thought I davened, but my davening, I was just mumbling words, and crying to Hashem like, Hashem, I hope you can really have accepted my prayers. I really didn't accomplish what I could. And Reb Elimelech would pass his own judgment, and they were kind of, it was like each one having, they were brothers, they were close, but they were having this conversation about areas that they could grow and the struggles they had. And what would happen was the host would be like, whoa, if those people who are so righteous or so good and they're struggling and they have things that they're not doing well, what it would actually do is it help that person learn for themselves and take a look at themselves in that area. So sometimes when you want to go and influence someone, you want to judge. Yeah, first of all, we're not God. It's not our place. But let's say you want to have an influence, you can go to someone and say, oh, this is something you need to work on. Or you could be human and you could be like, this is something I'm working on. Now, not in a fake way, because if you're being inauthentic about it, what's going to happen? Exactly. It's not going to work. But I find often sometimes that when we're real about the things that we're all working on, then other people can see themselves in that. And it's not about vulnerability, and it's not about putting all our dirty laundry on out to shine. It's about being human, and really, if a person sees, that's where Reb Zusha and Elimelech kind of in a way judging themselves, then it helps that person look inward and reflect on their own reality. Now, we've talked about this with parenting. We've talked about this with creating, is if we come to the table as a parent who knows it all, we're also human beings. When we can be real and when we can be like, you know what, I overreacted yesterday, or you know what, I really owe you an apology. As a parent, when I can do that, I can model for my children what that behavior could look like at a higher level. So when we can do that with our siblings, when we could, and I saw today, Menucha, I was at Chabad in the morning. Menucha comes running over, crying, holding her siddur. Levi was leading the davening, and he was doing it so loud, and then he snapped at me. And I said, well, what'd you do? I was so upset, I just, left. Fine. He comes in 5 minutes later, he's like, listen, Menucha, I'm really, really sorry. Like, I really lost it at you, and I really shouldn't have. And I was so impressed that he had that ability to be like, take responsibility. He like calmed down. He's like, I'm glad you calmed. He tells her, I'm glad you calmed down, but now I feel like I really owe you an apology. There's no doubt that if we can model what that looks like, we're giving a gift to children, grandchildren, to our spouse, to ourselves. And not that we have it all figured out and we got it all together. And it's so interesting. In a lot of my sessions with these high schoolers and these students, I keep saying to them, I'm like, you're stressed out, you're anxious, you're worried about the unknown. Please stop and remember your parents are also going through this. And they're responsible for you and all your siblings. Like I try to give turn a mirror inward to the kids that they can see that you're going to go and judge your siblings what they're going through right now. There are days that you're having a hard time. So we were in the car this morning and we're having a conversation that one of the siblings is having a hard time this morning and how we can react better to help that. Not that what they're doing is right and not that their behavior is okay, but we can, as a loving, nurturing family, see that the fact that this behavior is coming from a weak place, that they need help. They need more understanding and more compassion and more patience and more ignore or more look the other way and not just react. And in it, one of the other ones is like, yeah, but this has been going like this, having a hard day, week, month, year is going on for a little too long. Like, okay, that's fine, but like enough, And the other one says, yeah, but we all have to know this is our little drive to school this morning. We all know what that's like because we also have times when we're freaking out and we're not doing well. So I think that when we open this kind of dialogue about judging someone else and seeing the reality that someone else is going through, and I want to share the video that Rabbi shared, and I think it's just so, whoops, I'm at the wrong Facebook page. It's just so powerful. Yes, did you share it on your own page or Chabad's page? He doesn't remember. Hold on, we'll find it. I think
it was his own.
Was it his own? I love that you know, Rachel. Like,
because I shared it.
It's by the way, it was like got one of the most. I got like 76 or 77 shares because it was that powerful of a little clip. And I think it really drives this point. Hold on, I'm pausing my thing. I'm gonna just pause and I'm going to hit my share screen, which, me and the tech will get this, ladies, we get this. Share screen here, share my computer sound. Okay, do you guys see my share screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So the class Soul Maps on Tanya, he's actually the author of Soul Maps on Tanya, and he has a real gift. We've covered it in the past. He has a real gift of being able to give information over in a very clear way. Can I just ask you a question? Do you see a bar across his face or not?
No.
No, okay, that's just what I see. Fine, perfect. It's short.
This lighter was kept inside dry in the house last night. This lighter was left outside in the rain. Now, if you didn't know all that, you would just assume right off the bat that this lighter is a good lighter, this one not so much. We do that with people, we make assumptions about them not knowing what they've been through, when all they may need is just a little bit of help. So be a spark for somebody, and they may be a spark for you.
Okay, so why do I find that so powerful? I mean, anyone want to share their thoughts or reflections on that very short clip? It's 29 seconds. I mean, it's short. Oh, wait. Do you still hear my screen? I thought I... Hold on. Do you see his video, or you just hear it?
No, we don't hear it or see it.
Okay, it was just playing on mine. Okay, thoughts on that very brief clip? Any thoughts on that clip?
It was very powerful for 29 seconds.
He has a gift of taking really big abstract ideas and bringing them into real bite-sized takeaways. He really is a gift. Sharon, do you any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think of the word pride, like you were saying, like ego. I is in the middle of that word, and just kind of taking a back seat. And I am not the center of the universe. And I remember we were talking about it, I was listening to you and a rabbi last night about, I don't remember her question exactly, something about how can I be more open to learning. And it's the same thing that we're talking about today is, not putting ourselves out in front, but just like the rabbi was saying, being able to, think about leaving the judgments behind, and that we don't know what happened to that person this morning or yesterday or whatever, where they're coming from. But again, putting myself, a little bit in the back and thinking about others first.
So anyone could think of who we can judge according to this passage of Reb Hillel. Anyone think who we can judge?
Ourselves.
Yes. How do you know that you could judge yourself?
Stay on guard.
Can you judge yourself? Because it says don't judge, don't realize that, don't have too much, don't think that you're invincible. Yeah. However, here's where I want to say, it says don't judge someone till you're in their place. Whose place are you in?
You're in your shoes.
Exactly. So you are wearing your shoes. So be able to introspect and grow. Now, the problem is that we think of judgment as this just negative thing, but if you can look and introspect and say, where have I failed today? Where can I succeed? And that was another point that we talked about, Sharon, last night is how we perceive failure. That's going to make a huge difference. However, if you have a problem, sometimes it's really hard to see that problem, right? Let's say you have a weakness or a flaw and you can't figure out you can't own it or can't judge it in a sense. So a lot of times what will happen is Hashem, by divine providence, will put someone in your path, who will help you see that problem. Anyone could think of how he would do that with Hashgacha Pratis, with divine providence? That's what the Baal Shem Tov teaches. Anyone have a thought of how someone else could teach us where maybe your judgment is failing? Because we know it says, it says interesting, while you think of that question, it says, love your fellow like you love yourself, because really love covers up all sins, right? Love is blind. Love blinds us from sometimes seeing our own weaknesses, our own flaws, which is why Rabbi Hillel says right near there, like, just understand that he starts with that, like, don't be, you're still human, you're still flawed. Until the day you check out, you can still mess up also, So anyone think of how God gives us that opportunity?
Well, the people and situations in which we have the most conflict, the most distress, and the most aggravation are the ones that we are meant to learn from. And I remember, I'm trying to remember the words because it's when I was in high school, and it was something about, you should thank God for, all the people who aggravate you because they are put there to teach you a lesson. And one of my best friends, we're like 14, says, well, I suppose he must be referring to my parents, but I still don't get it.
The truth is, this is why quarantine life or social distancing life has been so hard, is because we are surrounded constantly by people who do challenge us most about ourselves. So Baal Shem Tov had this beautiful line that my kids actually learned this year in school. It's called "A mensch is a spiegel." A man is a mirror. So if I want to see something, what's a mirror? A mirror is a piece of glass with some silver in the back, and the silver, or the silver sheen, reflects back at me. So when I look at someone and I see a negative character trait, really I'm finding something within myself. Now, I may not have the same degree of it, or I may not be able to see it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean it's not, to some percentage of that exists within myself. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to pinpoint it and know what I'm seeing. okay? And the Baal Shem Tov goes on to teach that the difference between a glass window, I'm pointing to my glass windows if you could see, the difference between a glass window and a mirror. A mirror has that silver, and that silver at times can represent, oh, Sharon, give an extra hug from us. We all understand sometimes a hug is the best thing in the world, right? So a glass, we could really see someone else's reality, whereas a mirror, it really reflects back at us. So when we look at someone, make sure we're almost looking through a glass, not at a mirror. Because if we see negative, then chances are there's something within us that's negative. Which, if you saw the image Rabbi shared last week. Did I show it to you ladies also? That if you only see what's wrong with the world, then you're really, if you see what's wrong with the world, then you found a place that you can have impact, like a part of the world that needs you to fix it. But if you only see like negative in others, then you've found something within yourself to fix. So it's deep, it's profound, it's based on, again, Chabad teachings, but the idea being that are really, when we're judging someone else, we have to look within. And I want to tell you one more story, and then I want to jump off. I want to hear more of your thoughts on this. There's a very famous story of the Chabad rabbis, and I think it was the Rebbe Rashab, maybe the Maharajah Mantra. I should really know this before I quote it. But he had private audience with different Hasidim, and he would ask his shamish. I've said the story before because it left such an impression on me when I was a young child, and I think it's perfect for this. He said that when people would come to him, they'd come to him with all their, like we said in the beginning, they'd come to a Rebbe, a Nasi Adar, with all their problems, whether it's material and spiritual ones, weaknesses, flaws, things that are going in their marriage, with their children, whatever they're carrying in life, and they'd come and get advice. So he would ask for a change of shirt. So once the shamash said, why do you keep changing your shirt? So he said, I'll pay you for the rest of the day, but you clearly don't get what's going on here. And he explained that basically he was sweating profusely. He said that basically when someone would come in and unburden their challenges and their problems, their struggles that they had, I would have to hear them from the perspective first of myself. Then I would have to shift and change into their reality to feel what they're feeling. Then I would go back to my reality of what advice I had for them, then go back into their reality of how they're going to respond to that advice. And all that back and forth is physically, emotionally daunting and draining. So when we were a kid, they said they'd have to change shirts. I'd have to change into his reality. And I literally remember as a kid, I thought that the Rebbe had 10 hooks outside his door where he'd switch shirts. Only when I was older did I understand this mindset. And I think that when someone's coming to us, when we can maybe go to a place of judgment, we have to try to truly see it through someone else's reality. And if all we see is negative, then we got to check our glasses, right? Or we got to check what we have within and what we could do. So how do we come back to Rachel's original question is how do we really see the essence is, and I'll go back to a quote that Rabbi and I say very often, is we tend to look at human beings as bodies that happen to have souls. Okay, they happen to have a divine spark. Chassidus teaches us, no, we're actually souls that happen to get into bodies, meaning we're infinite. Our neshama that we have, that each and every one of us has, is literally a chelek elokam imam, an infinite part of God. This divine energy. Now, the divine energy, if it's a part of Hashem, existed before it came into Marnia's body, and then after, God willing, a very, very long, wonderful, illustrious life of each and every one of us here, the soul returns to its source, its divine origin. So the limitation or the finite quality of a neshama is only when it's in the body. But neshama in essence is infinite. So when you look at people and you see the external self, the finite, then you see the differences. But when you see the quality, the essential potential, the neshama within, that's when you help that person actually see it for themselves. And I know in the field of, parenting and psychology talks about always how the way we think about our children and express to our children about who they are that's going to become their own inner voice. Okay. And how important it is to be cognizant of that. And that's not just within them. We have to believe in people. And I've told you stories, countless stories of how there was a student who on his own said, listen, here's all my Jewish books. I'm never going to need them in my life. And Rabbi and I said, we're not taking them. He said, no. And we said, okay, fine. We'll hold on to them. When you are going to have a strong, proud Jewish family, you're going to need these books. And the student laughed at us like, are you like off your rocker? And before this student went to get married to a beautiful Jewish woman to build a strong home with Shabbos and kosher, beautiful home, beautiful Jewish home where there's no question it's a strong Jewish home. He called us and he said, I'm going to need those books back eventually. And he said, thank you for believing in me when I didn't know there was even anything to believe in. Meaning we can be, if we want to say we're a mirror, a man is a mirror, we could choose what we see in that mirror. Do we see the best or the better or the potential, or do we only see what's negative? If we're going to judge, we have to ask ourselves, what's the point of departure? Am I trying to help that person grow? But by judging themselves, that's how they affect the change. They didn't do it from judging everyone and getting on a stage and saying, you all need to improve and repent. It's not our way. It's not the Chabad, it's not the Jewish way. Everyone has this godly divine spark. So we have to move away the layers, see the essence of the person, the potential of that person, and help them see it. And I'll end with this story that I shared with, and I'm going to share later with the next group in Montreal, of a young college student coming to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And the student asked the Rebbe, like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? You're a Rebbe, but what do you do? Now, ladies, you're in touch with college students. They say what they think. The filter doesn't always work. Rachel here may be an exception, but they say what they think, which there's a beauty to that. There's a beauty to that, okay? Because that's how we can grow. That's how the world progresses. So the student asked straight up, like, what's your point here? You're sitting in an office, what are you doing? And the Rebbe said, I'm a soul geologist. Students are saying. He says, you look at the earth outside, you can see dirt, rocks, mud. What it takes a geologist to know where to find the diamonds, where to find the gold, and where to find the silver. Someone who really knows what they're, right? And they know it requires digging. Now, don't go to the backyard and try to find diamonds, right? We're not geologists. It's not our thing. But within every single one of us, there's diamonds. It's a precious stone, precious bright stone. And a soul geologist will tell someone where to dig to find it. Dig through all the layers, so that that bright shining stone can shine. And one more story, very similar context, where another college student in a yichidus with the Rebbe asked the Rebbe, again, what's the point of a Rebbe? He said, he looked at the light, and I've said this story probably to you ladies before. He said, what's that? He said, it's a light bulb. He said, give the light. He said, no, really, it's connected by wires to a plant, which goes to a windmill. And this was in New York, and by the Niagara Falls, and that brings the energy to the power plant, which fine tunes it into the wire, into the thing. So the Rebbe said, that's right. So the light bulb in and of itself can't give light. And the Rebbe said, correct. My job as a Rebbe is to in a dark room, point out to someone else where the light switch is. They have that light within them. Sometimes the room is so dark you can't even find it. And you look at an empty light bulb, you say it's not functioning. Well, it's not functioning because it needs to be connected. So my job is to point out to you where that light switch is, to find that light within. And I think for us as Chassidim, there was no greater teacher of how to see the potential, not potential, because it's not my place to judge what someone else's potential, but not to judge. And I think this is something that, I've shared this with you ladies locally, that Rabbi and I, a lot of people already think they know how we're going to perceive them and how we're going to judge them. And it's the furthest from the truth. Because at the end of the day, I always say, when that door opens and someone walks through that door, I never know how our lives are going to become interconnected. But when two souls meet, something powerful is meant to happen. So we got to see beneath the surface, uncover the layers, and when we do, we help other people see that in themselves as well. So l'chaim, I took a funny bottle today. I didn't have a cup. L'chaim, ladies, to each and every one of you, to each and every one of us. may we be able to learn all these lessons in a real way, in a way that we can also apply it, not just theoretically in the abstract, but to those we're quarantined with and those we're spending a lot of extra time with. If we start by changing in here, then the ripple effect is, God willing, incredible. Any thoughts? Any questions, thoughts?
I guess like I've heard these thoughts before, but as far as like you, Manya, like did it come naturally to you to perceive people this way, or was it just like?
I think it's honestly watching. For me, our major influence, well, first my parents were incredibly, as far as like really treating everyone equally, and you know, my mother's best friends with the fishmonger and the vegetable guy. Like, she was always great to people, and they role modeled how to treat people. I would also say that really the teachings of the Rebbe, the teaching of Chabad Hasidus, really, really shaped a lot of how I see things. And so I think the more it's like any other muscle, we want it to grow, we got to just do it. There's no replacement for just doing it. So we got to practice. And so that means that once this week, we could say to ourselves, okay, I'm about to go to this place of judgment. I'm online. Actually, you know, there are times where I notice someone online posting such toxic things. I'll unfollow them, not because, okay, I could just ignore their toxicity. I'll unfollow them because I don't want to see them as their posts. I don't want to see them as that person. They're so much bigger than their posts on Facebook or social media. Does that make sense? So little practices that we can do to fine tune the way we see things. Ladies, L'chaim, Rachel, we can continue this conversation privately, not right now, but privately, and we'll see everyone tomorrow for Let's Talk. Sarah, yes, we'll talk, and Sarah, I'm gonna look at the thing tonight. I'm gonna send out the link actually in our chat for it also, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Here, ladies.
Thank you.
I'll see you.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.